Renata Boswell was 34 years old when she found her boarding pass torn in half at the bottom of the kitchen trash. 12 years of marriage, and Desmond hadn't even bothered to hide it well. She opened the airline app with shaking hands. There it was, his name, and next to it, Patricia Alvarez. Same flight, same resort, checking in tomorrow morning. Desmond didn't deny it when she confronted him. He didn't even flinch. He told her Patricia actually appreciated him, that Nia could just sit this one out. He said it standing in the kitchen she'd paid for, next to the counter she'd financed, holding a phone loaded with a trip booked entirely on her credit card. He had no idea the card was hers alone. He had no idea what that meant. He went to bed that night feeling like a man who'd gotten away with something. Nia sat downstairs in the dark, laptop open, account still logged in, and she started clicking. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from today. And if stories like this speak to you, hit subscribe, because tomorrow's story is even more intense. The house was quiet at 4:47 in the morning. Nia liked it that way. She sat at the small desk in the corner of the living room, the one Desmond called her little command center, the one she'd stopped defending years ago. The lamp threw a warm circle of light across her laptop screen. Outside, the neighborhood was still dark. No cars, no birds yet, just the soft hum of the refrigerator down the hall and the occasional creak of the house settling into itself. She opened the first tab, their mortgage account. She'd set up automatic payments years ago, but she still checked manually every month, the way her mother had taught her to check twice before signing anything. The balance was current. It was always current. She was the one who made sure of that. She moved to the next tab, their joint credit card. She scanned the recent charges with the same quiet focus she brought to the audit files on her work desk. Groceries, the electric bill, Desmond's gas, a charge from the hardware store she didn't recognize, but noted and let go. Then she opened her own card, the one in her name only. This was where the trip lived. She pulled up the confirmation folder she'd built over the past 2 months, a neat stack of PDFs, each one labeled and dated. Round-trip flights to Turks and Caicos, a beachfront resort, 7 nights, booked at the early rate before prices climbed. A snorkeling excursion for their 3rd day, a sunset catamaran cruise for their 5th, a dinner reservation at a restaurant on the water that required a deposit, which she'd paid without hesitation. 12 years. She'd wanted it to feel like something, not just a dinner out or a new picture frame for the hallway, but something that said, "We are still choosing this." She'd asked Desmond back in February if he wanted to help plan. He'd been on his phone at the time, leaning against the kitchen counter, not quite listening. "Whatever you want, babe. You're better at that stuff anyway." So she'd done it herself. She always did. She printed the boarding passes that Thursday evening, folded them neatly into the little envelope she'd bought specifically for this. Ivory cardstock, the word adventure printed in small letters across the front. She left his on the kitchen counter where he'd see it when he got home. She put hers in the envelope. Then she tucked the envelope in her tote bag and went to start dinner. She had met Patricia Alvarez exactly once. It was Desmond's company holiday party, held in December at a rented event space downtown. Exposed brick walls, Edison bulbs, a bar that closed at 10. Desmond had introduced her around with his usual easy charm, one hand on the small of Nia's back. "This is my wife, Renata." He always used her full name in public, like it made her sound more impressive than she felt in her good dress and her careful updo. Patricia had been standing near the bar with a drink in her hand, 20-something, pretty in a sharp, deliberate way, heels that said she'd thought about the impression she was making. She smiled when Desmond introduced them. "Nia, right? He talks about you." A small laugh. "All good things." Nia had shaken her hand, warm, firm. "Nice to finally put a face to the name." They talked for maybe 4 minutes before someone pulled Desmond away and the moment dissolved. Nia had moved on to the next conversation. She hadn't thought about Patricia again. Why would she? By March, Desmond had started taking his calls on the porch. The first time she assumed it was a client. Real estate ran on odd hours. She'd known that when she married him. The second time she noticed he waited until she was in another room before he stepped outside. The third time, she was already in bed when she heard the back door ease shut, and she lay there listening to the low murmur of his voice through the glass until it stopped. She told herself it was a difficult listing, a deal going sideways. He told her once early on that work stress made him pull inward. She had believed him then. She found it easier to believe him now. At dinner, he was present the way a photograph is present. He sat across from her, he ate the food, he nodded at the right moments, but his eyes kept moving to his phone, face down on the table beside his glass, and every time it buzzed, he moved it slightly without looking at it. "Long day?" she asked. "The Linwood property," he said. "Buyers are being difficult." She nodded. She passed him the bread. She did not push. That evening, after dinner, she pulled the kitchen trash bag from the bin and knotted it. She carried it out to the side of the house where the big cans sat, lifted the lid, and dropped the bag in. Then she stood there, because something white had caught the light at the bottom of the second bin. The recycling. She almost let it go. She almost turned around and walked back inside. She didn't. She reached down and pulled it out. 2 pieces of stiff paper, printed, torn cleanly down the middle. Her boarding pass. She stood in the dark, holding both halves, and looked at them for a long time. She stood at the side of the house for a long moment. The porch light from next door cut across the driveway in a pale yellow stripe. A dog barked somewhere down the block, then went quiet. Nia looked down at the 2 halves of the boarding pass in her hands. Her name printed across the top, the flight number, the seat she'd chosen, 14A, the window seat because she always picked the window. Torn right down the middle. Not crumpled, not accidentally folded wrong. Torn. She set the pieces on top of the recycling bin and took out her phone. She opened the airline app, the one she'd downloaded when she booked the trip, the one linked to the shared account they both had access to. Her fingers moved slowly, carefully, the way they moved when she was reviewing a claim she wasn't sure about yet. She found the booking. The reservation was still there. Same flight, same resort, same check-in date. Tomorrow morning. But the names had changed. Desmond Boswell, Patricia Alvarez. Nia stared at the screen until the backlight dimmed. She pressed the button to keep it lit. She read it again. She read it a third time, the way she read figures that didn't add up, waiting for the number to rearrange itself into something that made sense. It didn't. She picked up the 2 halves of her boarding pass. She slid them into the pocket of her cardigan. Then she walked back into the house. Desmond was on the couch, shoes off, scrolling his phone with one ankle crossed over his knee. The television was on, but muted. He looked up when she came in. His expression didn't change much. "You're letting the cold in," he said. Nia closed the door behind her. She stood near the entrance of the living room, not sitting, not moving toward him. She held up her phone so he could see the screen. "You changed the reservation," she said. He looked at the screen. Then he looked at her. Something shifted in his face. Not guilt, exactly. More like the look of a man deciding how much effort a conversation was worth. "Yeah," he said. "I was going to tell you." "When?" "Tonight." He set his own phone down on the cushion beside him. "Look, Nia, things have been off between us for a while. You know that." She said nothing. "Patricia and I—" He paused, rubbed the back of his neck. "It's been going on for a few months. I'm not going to stand here and pretend it isn't. She gets me in a way that—" He stopped again, and what came next landed with a kind of casual finality that told her he'd thought about how to say it. "She actually appreciates what I do, Nia. It doesn't feel like work with her." The room was very quiet. "So you tore up my boarding pass," Nia said. "I needed the seat." "You needed my seat." He exhaled like she was the one being unreasonable. "You can sit this one out. Take some time. We can talk when I get back." When I get back. like he was going on a business trip, like she was a scheduling conflict. "The card you used," Nia said. Her voice was even. "The resort, the excursions. The joint card is not the card I used." She kept her voice flat and precise, the way she kept it during interviews with claimants who'd gotten their story slightly wrong. "The reservation was on my card, my name only." He blinked, just once, a small hesitation. "Well, it'll work itself out," he said. "You always handle that stuff." And there it was. That was the whole of it. You always handle that stuff. 12 years of her handling everything, and he had simply assumed it would keep going in whatever direction he pointed it. She looked at him for a moment. His expression was already drifting back toward his phone. "Okay," she said. He glanced up. "Okay," he repeated, like he'd expected something louder. "I'm tired," she said. "I'm going upstairs." He watched her cross the room. She could feel him watching, trying to read whether she was about to cry, whether this was the quiet before the part where she threw something. She didn't give him either one. She climbed the stairs without hurrying. She sat on the edge of the bed in the dark and listened to the house. 30 minutes passed. Then she heard the television come back on, volume low, and the familiar sound of Desmond settling in. The couch cushions, the blanket he pulled from the basket by the armrest when he didn't feel like climbing the stairs. He did this sometimes when things were tense. She used to go down and tell him to come to bed. She did not go down. She waited. An hour, maybe a little more. The television went quiet. His phone stopped its small buzzing. Then she got up, walked back downstairs in the dark, and sat down at her little command center. She opened her laptop. She opened the reservation. The account was in her name. The card was in her name. The resort, the rental car, the excursion package, the catamaran cruise, the dinner reservation. All of it. Every confirmation number, every booking, every carefully planned piece of the trip she had built for 2 people, one of whom had torn her name right out of it. She clicked into the first reservation. Her hands were steady. The house was completely still. The only light in the room came from her laptop screen. Outside, the street was dark and quiet, not even a car passing. Just the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the sound of Desmond breathing somewhere below her. Nia pulled up the first email. Coral Bay Resort and Spa, booking confirmation. She read through it once, the same way she read through a claims file before making a decision. Calmly, completely, making sure she understood exactly what she was looking at before she touched anything. Then she clicked the cancellation link. The page loaded. It asked her to confirm. She confirmed. Your reservation has been canceled. A full refund will be returned to the card on file within 5 to 7 business days. She moved to the next email. Island Breeze Car Rentals. Reservation number IB-8841. She canceled it. Your reservation has been canceled. She moved to the next one. The excursion package. A catamaran cruise and a reef snorkeling tour she had booked 4 months ago, back when she still thought this trip was going to mean something. She remembered sitting at this same desk on a Tuesday evening, reading reviews and comparing departure times, trying to pick the one Desmond would enjoy more. She canceled it. Then the dinner reservation at the resort's waterfront restaurant, a place she had found on a travel blog and put on a list. 2 nights before departure, she'd confirmed it with a handwritten note to herself on the little yellow sticky pad she kept by the keyboard. Dinner, 7 p.m., Thursday. Confirm by Monday. She'd confirmed it Monday. She canceled it now. The last one took her a moment to find. It wasn't in the main booking folder. She had to search her email for it. A spa credit Desmond had added to the resort account sometime in the past week. She hadn't noticed it until she was going through the reservation details tonight. A couple's massage, a facial. Her name wasn't on it. Patricia Alvarez. Nia looked at the name on the screen for a moment. Then she opened the resort portal, found the attached credit, and removed it. Spa credit has been voided. Refund applied to card on file. She closed the laptop. She sat in the dark for a little while, not moving, not thinking about much. The anger was there. She could feel it, quiet and solid, somewhere just below her ribs. But it wasn't the kind that needed to break anything. It just sat there, heavy and still, like ballast. She went upstairs. She lay down on her side of the bed. She did not sleep, not really, but she rested with her eyes closed and her hands folded over her stomach until the room began to go gray with early light. She heard him before she saw him. The shower running, drawers opening and closing, the zip of his duffel bag. He moved through the bedroom with the quick, certain energy of a man with somewhere to be. He didn't seem to notice that she was awake. Or maybe he assumed she was still asleep and preferred it that way. She kept her eyes closed. She heard him come to her side of the bed, felt the slight dip as he leaned over. His lips, brief and dry, pressed to her cheek. The smell of his cologne, the good one, the one he saved for important things. "I'll call you when I land," he said softly. She said nothing. He straightened up, picked up his bag, walked down the stairs. She listened to the front door open, close, the locks, his car starting in the driveway, the engine growing quieter as he turned out of the street. Then silence. She opened her eyes. She didn't rush. She brushed her teeth, washed her face, and stood in front of her closet for a moment before pulling out her overnight bag from the top shelf. The small navy one, the one she used for work trips. She packed for 3 days. Clean clothes, her toiletries bag, her phone charger, the folder of documents she kept in the bottom drawer of her nightstand, insurance papers, account statements, the copies she made of things because she had always been the one who made copies of things. She zipped the bag. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and called her mother. Odessa picked up on the second ring, which meant she was already awake, which was not a surprise. "Nia?" Not a question. "I'm coming to stay for a few days," Nia said. "If that's all right." A short pause, not because Odessa was surprised, because she was listening to something in her daughter's voice, taking stock of it. "I'll put the coffee on," Odessa said. Nia exhaled, just once, slow and quiet. "Thank you, Mama." She hung up. She stood. She picked up her bag. She walked through the house once, through the living room, past the couch where Desmond had slept, through the kitchen where the recycling bin still sat near the back door. She turned off the lights as she went. She stepped outside. She locked the front door behind her. She put her bag in the car, started the engine, and drove. Odessa's house smelled like coffee and dryer sheets. It always had. Even when Nia was small, that combination meant safety, meant someone was home, someone was awake, someone had thought ahead enough to run a load of laundry before the day got away from them. Mia stood in the doorway of the small guest room at the end of the hall and set her bag on the quilt-covered bed. She started to unpack. Slowly, methodically, the same way she did everything. She hung her clothes in the narrow closet, set her toiletries bag on the bathroom shelf, placed the document folder on the nightstand where she could reach it easily. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Desmond. She sat down on the edge of the bed. She let it ring once more. Then she answered. "Nia?" His voice was tight and clipped, the way it got when he was embarrassed and trying to disguise it as anger. "What did you do?" "Good morning, Desmond." "Don't do that. Don't give me that voice. The resort has no reservation. The car company says the booking was canceled. The excursion people sent a refund notice to my phone an hour ago." A pause. She could hear noise behind him. The flat, echoing sound of an airport terminal, announcements overhead, the roll of luggage wheels on hard floors. "What did you do?" "I canceled the reservations," she said. "You?" He stopped himself. She heard him move, his footsteps quick and sharp, like he was stepping away from something. Or someone. "Do you have any idea what just happened? We showed up at the check-in desk, and there was nothing there. Nothing, Nia. Patricia had to stand there in front of other people while they told her the room didn't exist." And there it was, behind his voice, another voice. Patricia's. Not panicked, not apologetic, just irritated. The crisp, impatient irritation of someone whose plans had been inconvenienced. Nia could hear her clearly. "This is ridiculous," Patricia said, somewhere nearby. Not to Nia, not even really to Desmond, just out loud, to no one, like the situation owed her a better outcome. Can they not just rebook it? They want full payment up front, Desmond said, away from the phone. Then back to Nia. See? This is what you did. You humiliated her. Nia was quiet for a moment. Desmond, she said, that card is mine. It's in my name. The credit limit on it exists because of my credit history. The account is 12 years old because I opened it, and I paid it on time every month for 12 years. She kept her voice even, the same tone she used at work when she was walking a claimant through a denial. Clear, patient, final. It is not a shared convenience. I chose to use it for our life. I chose to stop. Silence on his end. You did this on purpose, he said. His voice had dropped now, quieter, which meant the anger had gone somewhere deeper. You planned this. You tore up my boarding pass, she said. And then you went to sleep. Another pause. She heard Patricia say something she couldn't make out, and then Desmond's voice went muffled, like he'd pressed the phone against his chest or turned away. There was a brief, low exchange she couldn't follow. Then he came back. We're done talking, he said. All right, Nia said. He hung up. She held the phone in her lap for a moment and looked at the wall across from her. The pale yellow paint, the small framed print of a coastal scene Odessa had hung there years ago. A beach, blue water. She had always liked that picture. She stood up and walked back down the hall toward the kitchen. Odessa was at the counter, refilling her coffee mug, but the way she turned when Nia came in made it clear she hadn't moved far from that spot during the call. Airport, Nia said simply. I gathered. Odessa set the pot down. She looked at her daughter, not with pity, which Nia wouldn't have been able to stand, but with the careful, measuring look of a woman who had spent decades reading paperwork for a living and knew when something didn't add up. Was she there? She was there. Odessa made a small sound that wasn't quite a word. She pulled out a kitchen chair and sat down, wrapping both hands around her mug. What are you planning to do next? I don't know yet. Then you need to find out. Odessa's voice wasn't harsh, but it had an edge to it, the kind that came from experience rather than anger. One canceled trip doesn't tell you the whole story. You want to make a real decision? You need to know what you're actually deciding about. How long? How much? What he told people. She nodded toward the hallway. You brought documents. I know you did, because I know you. Nia almost smiled. Almost. You think there's more, she said. I think, Odessa said carefully, that a man who does this once has usually been doing it longer than once. Nia got her laptop from the bedroom. She came back to the kitchen, sat down at the table, and opened it. She pulled up the joint account portal, clicked into the transaction history, and set the date range back 12 months. She started reading. Camille Foster did not do anything casually. She arrived at Odessa's house on Thursday evening with a canvas tote over one shoulder, a legal pad under her arm, and a travel mug of tea she'd made herself because she didn't trust other people's tea. She hugged Nia at the door, set her things down on the kitchen table, and uncapped her pen before she'd even sat down. Okay, she said. Walk me through what you have. That was Camille. No opening remarks about how terrible this was, no long stretch of consolation. She had given Nia that on the phone 2 nights ago, the genuine, unguarded version of it, her voice low and honest. And now they were past it. Now they were working. Nia opened her laptop. 12 months of joint account statements, she said. I flagged anything that didn't match our usual pattern. She turned the screen toward Camille and pointed to the column of highlighted rows. Florist charges. This one, this one, this one here. She scrolled down. And hotel charges. A place called the Landmore. I've never heard of it. Camille leaned in. Her eyes moved across the screen the way they did at the office. Fast, systematic, nothing skipped. She picked up her pen and started writing on the legal pad without looking away from the screen. "What's the earliest one?" she asked. Nia clicked back to the oldest statement. 14 months ago. Camille wrote it down. She didn't say anything for a moment. She just drew a slow line under the date, like she was sealing it in place. "So this started 2 months before you even suspected anything," Camille said. "Before I had a reason to suspect anything," Nia said. There was a difference, and they both understood it. Camille kept writing. The florist charges came every 3 to 4 weeks, never on a Friday. Always a Tuesday or Wednesday, the kind of day that sounded like nothing special. The hotel, the Landmore, showed up 9 times over 14 months. Not a random overnight, a pattern. The kind of pattern Camille saw in fraud cases, where someone had decided the behavior was sustainable and stopped being careful about the spacing. "These hotel charges," Camille said, tapping the legal pad. "What category is he coding them as in his head? Because someone's paying for these. Does he do expense reports at his brokerage?" "He does," Nia said. "Client entertainment, client dinners. He talks about it, says the brokerage reimburses if you document the client name." Camille looked at her. Nia looked back. Neither of them said the obvious thing yet. They didn't need to. It was Camille who suggested pulling up the shared family tablet to build a cleaner timeline. The tablet sat on the kitchen counter, used mostly for recipes and video calls with Odessa's sister in Atlanta. Nia brought it to the table and opened it. She was looking for photos, a birthday dinner from last spring, something she could use to pin a date. She opened the photo app and scrolled back through the months, clicking into albums. She almost missed it. The tablet's messaging app was still logged in to Desmond's account. He'd used it once to reply to a text when his phone was charging, and he'd never logged out. The notification badge on the app said 7 unread messages. Nia almost kept scrolling. She didn't. She opened the app. The most recent thread at the top was from Patricia. Nia tapped it open and started reading from the top. The thread went back 8 months. Most of it was unremarkable. Short exchanges, logistics, a string of messages that made Nia's jaw tighten for reasons she didn't examine too closely. But then she found it. A message from Patricia, dated 11 months ago, sandwiched between 2 others like it was nothing at all. She seemed nice enough at the holiday party, LOL. Very organized, very I handle everything. Classic placeholder wife energy. Desmond had sent back a laughing emoji. Just that. 1 laughing emoji. Nia read the message again, then once more. Placeholder wife. She turned the tablet around and set it in front of Camille. Camille read it. Her expression didn't change exactly, but her pen stopped moving. She set it down on the legal pad carefully, the way you set something down when you want to make sure you don't snap it. "She was at the holiday party," Nia said. Her voice was steady. "I shook her hand. She knew exactly who I was." "She knew the whole time," Camille said, not a question. "The whole time," Nia said. The kitchen was quiet for a moment. Outside, a car passed on the street. The refrigerator hummed. "This isn't the whole picture yet," Camille said. She picked her pen back up. "Those hotel charges. If he's billing them as client dinners and getting reimbursed by his brokerage, that's not just a personal problem anymore. That's fraud." She tapped the legal pad with the end of her pen. "I need to see his actual expense reports. What he submitted, what got approved, and by who." Nia thought about it. "Desmond's brother Terrence," she said. "He handles contracting work for some of the same family real estate accounts. He'd have access to shared business documents." "Can you call him?" Nia picked up her phone. "Yes," she said. Terrence Boswell showed up 5 minutes early. Nia was already at a corner table at the coffee shop on Meridian Street, a plain dark roast in front of her and her notepad open. She watched him come through the door. Big shoulders, work boots still dusty at the toe, the kind of man who never fully left the job site even when he wasn't on one. He spotted her right away and walked over without looking around the room first. That was Terrence. Direct. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. "Nia." He said her name like it settled something. Not a greeting exactly, more like an acknowledgement. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Of course." He took his jacket off and folded it over the back of the chair. "You sounded calm on the phone. I wasn't sure if that was good or bad." "It's neither," she said. "I just need information." He nodded. He looked like he'd been expecting that. The server came. Terrence ordered black coffee, no food. Nia waited until the server left before she slid the notepad across the table and walked him through what she and Camille had found. The hotel charges, the florist, 14 months of it, the text on the tablet. She kept her voice flat and factual, the way she talked through a claim file at work. Terrence listened without interrupting. He kept his hands around his coffee mug and his eyes on her face. When she finished, he didn't say anything for a moment. He looked out the window. His jaw moved once, like he was working something loose from between his back teeth. "I suspected," he said. "I didn't know, but I suspected." He looked back at her. "I'm sorry I didn't say anything." "You didn't know for certain," Nia said. "I'm not here about that." He nodded slowly. "What do you need from me?" "Desmond files expense reports through the brokerage. Client dinners, client entertainment. I think some of those charges weren't clients." She kept her eyes on him. "If those reimbursements went through on paper, there's a paper trail. I need to see what was submitted and what got approved." Terrence wrapped both hands around his mug. He didn't speak for a long moment. "There's something else," he said. His voice had changed. It dropped about half a register, the way a person's voice drops when they're about to say something they've been sitting on too long. Nia waited. "Last year," he said, "around October, Desmond called my father and asked for $15,000. He paused. "Said it was for your medical bills. Something about insurance not covering a procedure." The room didn't move. The noise of the coffee shop, the espresso machine, the low music, the couple 2 tables over, all of it kept going. Nia sat very still. "I never had any medical bills," she said. "I know that now." Terrence set his mug down. "Pop gave it to him. He didn't ask questions. You know how he is about family." He looked at her directly, and there was something in his face that wasn't quite shame, but was close to it. "Desmond used your name, Nia. Told him you didn't want anyone to know about the health stuff. Made it so Pop felt like he'd be embarrassing you if he brought it up." Nia looked down at her notepad. She wrote the amount at the top of a clean page. $15,000. She underlined it once. She didn't feel the urge to cry. What she felt was more like the sensation of a room coming fully into focus. All the furniture exactly where she now understood it had always been. "Okay," she said. That evening, Nia and Camille sat side by side at the kitchen table, with Terrence's documents spread between them. He'd pulled what he could access, 2/4 of Desmond's submitted expense reports, printed from the brokerage's shared vendor system, which Terrence could reach through a joint property management account they'd both been on for years. Camille went through them line by line. She circled the first one inside of 4 minutes. "Here," she said, turning the page toward Nia. "Client dinner, the Landmore, $280. She moved her pen to the approval field in the bottom right corner. "Approved by P. Alvarez." Nia looked at it. The Landmore. The same hotel she'd found repeated across 9 months of bank statements. "She works in the same office," Nia said. "Administrative coordinator," Camille confirmed. She was already flipping to the next page. "She has approval authority for routine client entertainment expenses under $500. She circled another line. And another one. Same hotel, different date. She circled the approval field again. P. Alvarez. They went through all of it. By the end of the hour, Camille had circled 7 reimbursement entries tied to the Landmore, all submitted by Desmond, all approved by Patricia. 3 more for a florist coded as client gift, approved by the same name. Nia leaned back in her chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment. Patricia hadn't just known. She'd signed off on it. She'd put her name on paper, in an official capacity and approved expenses that paid for her own hotel stays and her own flowers. The affair had a ledger, and both their names were on it. Nia pulled her laptop toward her and opened a new folder on the desktop. She labeled it simply documentation. Then she started saving copies. Every statement, every email, every circled page, one file at a time. Desmond came home on a Thursday. Nia heard his key in the lock just after 7. She was at the kitchen counter, reheating leftovers, and she didn't turn around right away. She let him come to her. "Hey." His voice was careful, measured, the voice of a man testing the floor before he put his full weight on it. "Hey," she said. He set his bag down near the stairs. She heard him move into the kitchen. A moment later, a vase appeared on the counter beside the stove. White tulips, wrapped in brown paper, the kind from the florist on Clement Street. Not cheap. He'd thought about it. She looked at them, then at him. He looked tired. His eyes were doing the thing they did when he needed something from her. Softer than usual, a little searching. She recognized it the way you recognize a song you used to like. "I know this isn't fixed," he said. "I'm not pretending it is." "Okay," she said. He stopped, tried again. "I want to try, Nia. I want to actually try." She turned back to the stove. "Are you hungry?" He blinked. "Yeah." "I'll make a plate." The flowers stayed on the counter. Nia didn't throw them away. Over the next 10 days, Desmond ran his campaign the way she'd half expected him to. A dinner reservation at Carmine's on a Friday. Her favorite, he remembered that much. A long conversation on the back porch where he said the word confused 4 times and stress 3 times and us twice, but only at the end, almost as an afterthought. He brought home her preferred brand of sparkling water without being asked. He stopped taking calls on the porch. He was performing, she knew that, but the performance itself told her things. She watched his schedule. He left at 8, was home by 6 most nights now, which meant the job, or the job that wasn't a job, had been disrupted. He checked his phone less in front of her, which meant he was checking it more when she wasn't looking. He laughed too easily at things she said. His whole body had the quality of a man walking carefully, watching for cracks. She was cordial, warm enough. She asked about his listings, listened when he answered, kept dinner on the table. She did not tell him she'd moved her savings to a separate account the week before. The deed conversation happened on a Tuesday evening. They were sitting in the living room after dinner. Desmond had the relaxed posture of a man who believed the worst was behind him. His arm was stretched across the back of the couch, close to her shoulder but not touching it. "I've been thinking," he said. She waited. "The house is in your name." He said it lightly, like it was just an observation. "Which made sense when we bought it, I know. You had the better credit." He smiled a little, self-deprecating, practiced. "But if we're really rebuilding, maybe it makes sense to add me to the deed. Show some good faith." Nia looked at him. She let the silence sit for exactly 2 seconds. "I'll think about it," she said. He nodded like that was more than he'd hoped for. "That's all I'm asking." She thought about the documentation folder on her desktop. She thought about Terrence's face in that coffee shop, the way his voice had dropped when he said $15,000. She thought about Patricia Alvarez's signature, circled in blue pen across 7 separate expense lines. "Sure," she said. "Let me think about it." She got his signature on something else entirely that week, a form clarifying his portion of a joint vehicle insurance adjustment she'd initiated. He signed without reading it. He was too busy being grateful she was still in the same room. Camille called on a Wednesday afternoon. "I need you to sit down," she said. Nia was already sitting. "Tell me." "So, I pulled Patricia's financial profile, what I could access through public records and the documentation you gave me." Camille's voice had the focused, stripped-down quality it got when she was reporting findings. Not dramatic, just precise. Rent assistance, 14 months, roughly $800 a month. Comes out of that same secondary account Desmond's been moving money into. Nia said nothing. She wrote the number on her notepad. "Car down payment," Camille continued. $4,200, paid out 8 months ago. I cross-referenced it with a vehicle registration filed under Patricia Alvarez around the same time. A pause. "Nia, this wasn't him being generous. I found a message thread, forwarded through the tablet backup you saved, where she names it directly. She tells him if the expense approvals stop, her cooperation stops. Her word, cooperation." The word landed in Nia's chest like a stone dropping into still water. She'd known Patricia was not innocent. She'd known that since the text thread, since the circled approval signatures. But this was different. This was negotiated. Patricia hadn't been swept up in something. She'd priced herself. "Both names," Nia said quietly. "Both names," Camille confirmed. "On everything." Nia drove to her mother's house that Sunday with a folder on the passenger seat. Odessa Marsh opened the door before Nia finished climbing the porch steps. She looked at the folder, then at her daughter's face. "Come in," she said. "Tell me what you need." They sat at the kitchen table the way they always did, Odessa with her tea, Nia with her notes spread out in front of her. "I want to do this once," Nia said. "All of it, at the same time. I want Terrence there, and his father, and I want Desmond to think he's walking into a reconciliation dinner." She looked up. "And then I want to show him exactly what reconciliation looks like when the other person has been paying attention." Odessa wrapped both hands around her mug. "Then let's figure out how to set the table," she said. Nia made pot roast. She'd started it that morning. Browned the meat, added the vegetables, let it slow cook all day until the whole house smelled like something warm and familiar. She set the table with the good placemats, folded the napkins, put out glasses for water and sweet tea. She was dressed simply. Dark slacks, a cream blouse, her hair pulled back. No jewelry except her watch. She wanted to look exactly like herself. The folder sat on the kitchen counter, closed, rubber band around it. She didn't touch it until she needed to. Desmond had been pleased when she suggested the dinner. "Just family," she'd told him the week before. "Your dad, Terrence, a real meal. I think it would be good for all of us." He'd looked at her the way he'd been looking at her lately, like a man who couldn't believe his luck, like the floor had held after all. "Yeah," he'd said, nodding slowly. "Yeah, that's a good idea, Nia." He'd told Terrence himself. He'd told his father himself. She'd let him. Desmond's father, Earl Boswell, arrived first. Earl was 71 years old, retired, with hands built from 40 years of physical work and a face that didn't hide much. He hugged Nia at the door with both arms, the way he always had. He smelled like the same aftershave he'd worn for as long as she'd known him. "You look tired," he said, studying her face. "I'm fine," she said. "I'm glad you came." Terrence arrived 3 minutes later. He looked at Nia across the threshold and gave her a single nod, small, steady, and she returned it. He handed her a bottle of sparkling cider and didn't say anything else. Desmond came downstairs when he heard voices. He was in a good shirt, freshly shaved, smiling the way he smiled when he wanted a room to feel easy. "Dad," he shook his father's hand, pulled him into a half hug. "Terrence," he clapped his brother's shoulder. Then he looked at Nia, moving back toward the kitchen, and his smile stayed in place. He thought he knew what tonight was. They sat down around 7. Nia brought the pot roast to the table, the bread, the green beans. Earl complimented it twice. Terrence asked for the salt. Desmond poured himself sweet tea and leaned back in his chair like a man settling in. They talked about small things. Earl's blood pressure medication, a job Terrence had finished in Marin, the weather turning. Nia listened. She ate. She waited. When the plates were mostly cleared and the table had that particular quiet that falls after a shared meal, Nia stood up, went to the kitchen counter, and came back with the folder. She set it at the center of the table and sat back down. Desmond looked at it. His smile didn't fall right away. It faded slowly, the way a light fades when the power is going out.
"What's this?" he said.
"Documentation," Nia said. Her voice was even, almost conversational. "I'd like to go through it together." She opened the folder and began placing items on the table one at a time, the way she laid out exhibits at work, methodical, each piece in its own clear space. First, the torn boarding pass, still in two halves, the tape she'd used to preserve it showing along the center seam. Earl looked at it.
"What is that?"
"My anniversary trip boarding pass," Nia said. Desmond tore it up to rebook the seat for someone else. Silence. Second, 4 printed pages of account statements, 14 months of charges highlighted in yellow. The florist on Clement Street, the boutique hotel on Valencia. Repeated, regular as a utility bill. Third, the brokerage expense reports, 7 pages, Desmond's submissions, circled in red, Patricia Alvarez's approvals, circled in blue. Dates aligned, amounts consistent, the same 2 names over and over on records that described client dinners that never happened. Fourth, a single printed page, the loan agreement between Earl Boswell and his son Desmond for $15,000, citing Nia's medical bills as the stated reason. Earl went very still. Terence spoke before anyone else could.
"Dad."
His voice was quiet, careful.
"I saw that agreement last spring when you asked me to witness it. I didn't know what the money was really for until recently."
He looked at his father directly.
"She never had those medical bills. There was no procedure. The money didn't go to Nia."
Earl turned to look at Desmond. Desmond had both hands flat on the table. His jaw was tight.
"It's more complicated than explain it," Earl said.
His voice was low, controlled, the voice of a man working very hard to stay that way.
"I was in a difficult spot financially. You used her name."
Earl's hand came down on the table. Not a slam, a placement, deliberate.
"You sat across from me, and you used this woman's name to take money from me. Dad, don't."
The word was small and absolute. Desmond turned to the expense reports. His jaw worked.
"These can be explained. Expense coding gets crossed sometimes. That's your signature and Patricia Alvarez's signature,"
Nia said. 14 times, on expenses that match hotel and florist charges on our joint account within 48 hours of each filing. She didn't raise her voice. "That's not a coding error." Desmond had no answer for that. She watched him search for one in real time, his eyes moving, his hands shifting, and find nothing. She waited until the silence had fully settled. "I want to be clear," Nia said, looking around the table, at Earl, at Terence, and finally at Desmond. "I didn't ask you here tonight to talk about saving this marriage. I asked you here so that the people whose trust was used against them could hear the truth from the same table." She folded her hands in front of her. "What happens next? I'm already handling." Earl turned back to his son.
$15,000,
he said. The devastation in his voice was quiet, which made it worse. "I gave you that money because I believed you. I was scared for her," He gestured toward Naya without looking away from Desmond. "I was scared for this woman." Desmond opened his mouth. "I want it back," Earl said. "Every dollar." Terence sat with his arms crossed and his eyes on the table in front of him. He did not look at his brother. He did not offer a word in his defense. He had nothing to offer. The compliance office was on the 4th floor of a glass building in the financial district. Gray carpet, frosted glass doors, a receptionist who offered Naya water twice before anyone came to meet her. She declined both times. She had called ahead and asked for the compliance director by name, a man named Gerald Hines, whose title she'd found on the brokerage's public website. She told his assistant only that she had documentation related to an internal expense matter and that she preferred to deliver it in person. She wore the same dark slacks as the night of the dinner, a different blouse, her watch. She carried the folder in a canvas tote bag and did not take it out until she was seated across from Gerald Hines at a small conference table with no windows. Gerald was maybe 50, careful-eyed, with the particular stillness of someone who had learned to show nothing until he understood what he was looking at. He shook her hand and sat down and waited. Naya placed the documents on the table the same way she always did, one page at a time, each in its own space. "These are copies," she said. "I have the originals." He studied each page without touching them at first. Then he picked up the expense reports, turned them over, set them back down. "The approvals," he said. "Yes," Naya said. "Patricia Alvarez. Her initials appear on each one." He looked at the account statements, the hotel charges, the florist. The dates aligned against the filing dates. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. She could see him reading the shape of it, a shape she knew very well, because it was the same shape fraud always took when you knew what to look for. A small leak, repeated, quietly maintained, trusted by the people around it. "I appreciate you bringing this in directly," he said. "I thought it was the right way to do it," Naya said. She didn't stay long after that. She thanked him for his time, confirmed he had her contact information, and left. She stopped for coffee on the way back to her car. She sat in the driver's seat and drank it while the city moved around her outside the window. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt finished, in the way a long project feels finished. Not electric, just done. The investigation took 4 days. She knew it was over when Terence called on a Thursday morning and told her Desmond had come home to collect some things from a storage unit and hadn't said a word about work. Camille confirmed the rest. She had a contact at the brokerage, not someone Naya had asked her to call, just someone who called Camille. And the word came back clean and simple. Desmond had been terminated. Patricia Alvarez was under active review for knowingly approving fraudulent reimbursements. Her real estate license had been flagged for suspension pending the outcome. The office where Patricia had believed she'd won something had become the place that took everything professional from her. Naya called Patricia and asked to meet. Patricia picked the coffee shop, a neutral place in the outer Sunset, close to nothing either of them owned. She arrived 4 minutes late and sat down without ordering anything. She looked like a woman bracing for a fight. Naya didn't give her one. "I'm not here to argue with you," Naya said. "I just wanted to say this to your face." Patricia's chin lifted slightly, a reflex. She was still performing something. Composure, maybe, or indifference. It was hard to tell which. "You knew about me," Naya said, "from the beginning. You met me at that holiday party. You saw the photo on his desk. You made a choice." Patricia didn't answer. "You negotiated payments. You approved paperwork you knew was false. You called me a placeholder." Nia said it without heat, the way she would read a line item back to a policyholder. Matter of fact, clean. That wasn't confusion. That was a decision you made, over and over, for 14 months. The coffee shop hummed around them, cups, voices, someone laughing 2 tables over. "I'm not here to threaten you or embarrass you," Nia said. "I'm here because I wanted you to know, before you tell yourself any other story about this, that what's happening to you right now isn't something that happened to you. She paused. You built it. Patricia looked at the table. She had no response. Not a word, not a shrug, not even the dismissive half-smile Nia had half expected. She just sat there, very still, with her hands wrapped around nothing. Nia stood up, put on her jacket, and left. Earl Boswell sent a formal repayment demand to Desmond through Terence the following Friday. Desmond paid it in 2 installments, the second one late, draining what little he had left in his separate account. Earl acknowledged receipt and did not call his son after that. The house had always been in Nia's name. She'd handled the mortgage application herself years ago because her credit score was the one that qualified. The paperwork had never changed. There was nothing to divide, nothing to negotiate. Desmond packed the rest of his things on a Saturday morning while Nia sat at the kitchen table with her coffee. He made 2 trips to his car. He didn't take much because most of what filled the house, the furniture, the dishes, the framed things on the walls, had been chosen and paid for by Nia. He stood in the doorway on his last trip out. He looked like he wanted to say something. Nia looked up from her coffee and waited. He didn't say it. He turned and walked to his car, and she heard the engine start, and then the sound faded down the street until there was nothing left of it. She set her mug down. The house was quiet, fully hers. The terminal was busy for a Tuesday morning, families with too much luggage, business travelers moving fast with their heads down, a toddler running in circles near the charging stations while her father pretended not to notice. Nia stood at the gate window with a coffee in her hand and watched the plane on the tarmac. A wide-body aircraft, white and clean in the early light, ground crew moving beneath it like they had all the time in the world. Her boarding pass was on her phone, not printed, not in anyone else's hands, just hers. The promotion had come 8 months ago, on a Wednesday, delivered by her director in a short meeting that felt almost too quiet for what it meant. Lead auditor, her own team, a caseload she helped design, a raise that finally matched what she'd been doing for years. She'd called Camille first, then her mother. She had not told Desmond. She didn't have a way to tell him anymore. That line of communication had been closed for a long time, and she hadn't missed it once. "You're doing that thing," Camille said, appearing at her elbow with a paper bag and a look of mock suspicion. "What thing?" "The staring at the plane thing, like you have to study it before you board it." Nia laughed. It came easy. It had been coming easier for a long time now. "I'm just looking." "We leave in 40 minutes, Camille said. She handed over the bag. "Croissant. You didn't eat this morning, don't lie." "I had coffee." "That's not food." Odessa arrived from the direction of the restrooms, rolling her small carry-on behind her, wearing a wide-brimmed sun hat she had absolutely no reason to wear yet, inside an airport in the morning. She looked completely unbothered about it. "The line for the women's room," she announced, "is a national emergency." "Mama, I'm just telling the truth." She settled into a seat at the gate and looked up at both of them. "Are we ready? Because I have been waiting 18 months for this trip and I am not missing this flight." "We've been here for 2 hours, Camille said. "Good. That's how you don't miss flights." Odessa pulled a book from her carry-on and opened it like the conversation was over. Nia sat down beside her and ate the croissant. The trip fund had never been touched. She'd separated it out the same week she'd moved into her mother's house, pulled it into its own account, labeled it, and left it alone. During the months that followed, it sat there quiet and patient while everything else moved. The compliance visit, the investigation, the dinner, Desmond's 2 trips to his car on that Saturday morning. She hadn't been saving it for a man. She'd been saving it for herself. She just needed time to get there. Terence had texted her the night before. "Have a good trip, Nia. You earned it." She'd written back, "Thank you, Terence, for everything." He had not reconciled with Desmond. She hadn't asked him to, or not to. That was his choice, made on his own terms, and she respected it completely. He came around for her mother's birthday in the spring. He'd fixed a leak under Nia's kitchen sink in October and refused to accept payment. They were not what they used to be, but what they were now was real, and that was enough. Somewhere across the city, in a one-bedroom apartment with a parking lot view, Desmond Boswell sat on the edge of a bed he hadn't made and scrolled through his phone. He stopped on a photo, the resort's website, the same property, the same white beach, the same teal water, the same one Nia had booked 2 years ago and he had handed to someone else. He stared at it for a moment. Then he kept scrolling. In a mid-sized city 400 miles away, Patricia Alvarez was in the middle of explaining, to a coworker she had known for 3 weeks, that the situation at her last job had been mishandled, that she'd been blamed for things she hadn't fully understood, that the people involved had been vindictive. The coworker nodded, the way people do when they aren't sure yet what to believe. Patricia had told this version of the story enough times that the edges of it had smoothed down. It almost felt true when she said it now. Almost. The gate agent announced boarding for Zone 1. Nia stood up, brushed the croissant flakes from her lap, and tucked her coffee cup into the nearest trash can. Camille was already on her feet, hauling her carry-on into position. Odessa was still reading, unhurried, until Nia touched her shoulder. "That's us." Odessa closed her book, stood, and straightened her hat like she was stepping onto a stage. They joined the line. When Nia reached the gate agent and held out her phone, the scan came back green and clean. The agent waved her through without looking up. Nia walked down the jetway. The door of the plane was just ahead. The air in the tunnel was warm and close, and then she stepped through the cabin door and found her seat. Window, left side, the one she'd picked herself, and sat down. She buckled her seatbelt. She looked out the window at the clear morning sky. She was ready. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I've got 2 stories on the screen that you have to watch next. Have a great day!